Happy holidays, Megan.
Happy holidays. Thank you.
Thanks so much for joining us today to talk with us about food security. It is obviously such an important issue, and it's also one that is easy to overlook, especially now when most of us are spending the majority of our days at home. And those familiar faces that we used to see on our way to work, to school, we know are struggling, we no longer see them. And I think that it's really important, to remember that there's a lot of people out there who are struggling. Before we begin, I have to mention all of the work that you have put towards reducing food insecurity, not only on campus, but also in Montreal. I have this list here. You are the founder of Food Cycle. You started a Facebook account, Food Sharing Potluck Project. You're also a coordinator with Zero Food Waste with Zero Waste Concordia. You work with People's Potato, The Hive, Concordia Food Coalition, along with other student food groups on campus to help them rescue their food leftovers. And you are also an intern with Feed the Hen in St. Henry's. Megan, did I miss anything with that long list?
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate that.
So, given the amount of time and effort that you've put towards food security in Montreal, I just want to start off by asking, what motivates you? Why is this issue so important to you?
Well, to be personal about my issue is that about 10-15 years ago, I actually experienced food insecurity. I lived out in Huntington, Quebec, which is about an hour outside of Montreal. And at the time, I was working at McDonald's and probably making about $300 a month. And I wasn't able to access food banks because I was currently employed at the time. So we participated, of course, in dumpster diving, and we had lack of resources and whatnot to contribute to our food nutrition. Years later, when I moved to Montreal and I was able to get off my feet, in the sense that I am privileged, not everyone has that privilege, of course, need to emphasize that. I met a few friends of mine who currently still lived on the street. And knowing that we as a community in Montreal of restaurants and food industries like grocery stores are throwing out an abundance of food, which could otherwise feed large amounts of people, did not make sense to me, especially since a lot of dumpsters around those areas would actually lock their containers so people wouldn't have access to it. And I don't see why we have to isolate ourselves knowing that there are our fellow friends going through these experiences. So that's what drove me into this area and domain.
Can you tell us what food security means? I mean, I think that for some people there's this association that food security means famine, right? That there's severe malnutrition, but it's more complicated than that. Can you tell us what food insecurity looks like?
Well, what food insecurity means to me is having the opportunity or lack thereof opportunity of requiring nutritional needs or meeting those needs. So for instance, this could be associated with financial resources or just resources in general, or in association with food deserts. So the lack of mobility to access grocery stores or any food industries for that matter. That's where food insecurity is related to in the community context of Montreal. Especially with COVID, a lot of people are losing their employment, they've experienced reduced hours, or they don't have access to other services that could potentially help them in those matters.
So can you tell us about food insecurity right now under COVID in Montreal? I'm hearing that there is a lot more stress on the food pantries. Do you have any direct experience that you could share with us?
Oh, 100%. I know that a lot of people are losing their employment in that matter. So what happens is that there's an increase where they don't have the financial means to acquire nutritional needs. When it comes to food pantries, they don't have enough fiscal donations to meet the needs of the public because it's growing so substantially. So for this matter, what's happening is that a lot of food pantries are increasing a demand in the public, but they don't have the financial means to meet those needs, and as well, or the infrastructure in the sense of employees, which puts a large stress on the industry in itself, and also just the individual standpoint. If they're currently employed, a lot of them cannot meet the requirements of obtaining food baskets or food donations because they have that financial, I guess, line.
Yeah.
Which makes it quite difficult, where we need to kind of change the system in itself.
Mm. Well, just touching upon that, what kinds of changes would you like to see? What do you think are needed?
Pardon me. I think that the number one change is donations from the government to help increase the infrastructure and increase the arm strength, I guess you could say, to acquire and meet the needs of the general public. In addition to that, I think that there needs to be more donations, but as well as an increased awareness of the community that surrounds us.
What about in terms of how we as individuals can help food security in our communities? What are the types of things you suggest? What can we do?
The first thing I would always suggest is reducing your amount of food that you purchase at a grocery store, because a lot of us are experiencing food waste in our individual homes. But the second thing, of course, that we can do is actually donate those leftovers. Now, there is a Facebook page that is called the Potluck Food Sharing Project.
Yeah.
And of course, individuals can post pictures as well along with their area code to let members of the community know that they have these items available, that there's too much in their household and that they would like to share with the community. In addition to that, there's a lot of organizations that are currently taking food donations. For instance, one that we know of is the newly obtained Meals on Wheels from the Hive, which is excellent, who are always looking for food donations to help feed not only the inside Concordia community, but outside as well. We have a few other organizations within McGill that's doing the same particular service, and as well as community fridges across Montreal area. And the last thing I can think of is actually going to the tent communities and providing leftover food. With the upcoming colder months, they need that nutrition to stay warm. So it's a lot to think about. There's a lot of resources at hand in Montreal that we can donate to.
So is it possible to donate while still respecting social distancing?
Of course, 100%. There's, from my understanding, no research that states that COVID can be transferred through food items, but there's also no research stating that it can, or it can't. In that regard, you have to be aware of what we're currently experiencing to take things upon your own risk. But I think that the number one thing, that there's three values to keep in mind, is the first one: we need to feed ourselves. We cannot survive and sustain ourselves without having nutritional needs met. The other two, of course, is finding shelter, and of course, adhering to water and sleep and rest and whatnot. But I believe that I know from personal experience, when I'm hungry, that's the only thing that I can think about.
Yeah.
And I need to survive and I need to feed myself in order to do that. So it's things to keep in mind. And also, prepackaged items are always the best way to go about. So things like canned foods, veggies that are not cooked, things like that. But I know for Feed the Hen at my internship, we have a lot of volunteers who cook meals and then place them in the community fridge afterwards for the community of St. Henry to take advantage of.
Wonderful. Can you tell us a bit more about the new initiative with People's Potato, Meals on Wheels?
Oh, that is with the Hive.
Oh,
and no problem. They recently launched a Meals on Wheels program where students and outsiders can actually sign up with a form. And at that point, the Hive the Hive will actually donate food baskets and deliver them, from my understanding. It's been in the process of starting up, and more, people can actually sign up on the Hive's website and as well as Concordia's website for the form, and it's completely free, which is wonderful.
And are you involved in that project in any way?
I But not on the front line. I am assisting in providing them potentially with donations of food items. So what I've been doing is getting in touch with outside restaurants from the downtown campus, as well as grocery stores, to have the donations rather than throwing those food items out, but to provide it to a community in need. And in addition to that, we are at Concordia trying to obtain an upcoming grant where we would allocate 100 tons of food per year. And at that point, we want to work with the Hive to do so. So we hope in the future to establish a community fridge at the Grey Nuns area, as well as other fridges for the Hive, the Frigo Vert, People's Potatoes to participate in, and potentially use some of that money of the grant to provide the Hive with a van to transport food items and food baskets.
It sounds like an amazing and ambitious project. And so the community fridges, those are really great for last minute donations, right? You made too much spaghetti for the party and then can just bring your leftovers to these community fridges.
Yes, and right now they're popping up everywhere. I know in Toronto there's many of them, outside of Montreal and Sherbrooke. They're all over. We have a few located in Montreal. Les Racontes de Rosemont is one that's located around the Hochelaga area. We have Feed the Hen in St. Henry. I think Fatima is still available, which is I believe near Guy Concordia, and I believe that the one in Little Burgundy is also available as well. So it helps a lot, and it creates anonymity and also autonomy, and increases, the food sovereignty in our community as well.
Interesting. So are there any, so you say these programs have been working really well, the community fridges?
Yes.
Are there any, for food safety or even security issues with the fridges? How are those addressed?
Well, food security, there's not much that really goes into it, because people show up, they bring the food, they kind of exchange in a way. So the community participates in taking and giving, and that's what creates that communal effect. Mm-hmm. However, the only issue with community fridges, of course, is the hoarding aspect. Some people, they might take more than they need, and that's an issue that's very difficult to address, because we want to always guarantee a mission statement of anonymity and becoming autonomous in your own means. Yes.
All right, so before we go, I want to know if you could tell us maybe 3 organizations that you would recommend our Concordia community to either drop off food or maybe even, financially support by writing a check to them for the holidays. Could you give us 3 organizations that you think are doing great work?
Well, number one I would suggest is, of course, the Meals on Wheels with the Hive. They've worked so hard the last couple of years to provide us free lunches at the Loyola campus, and I think that's incredible. And now that they're providing baskets in the downtown area and outside, I think that it would be a great one to start with. The second one, of course, is People's Potato, which actually increases admissions within the Concordia community, because of the fact that they provide free services prior to COVID, free lunches, and if I'm correct about this, they served 800 people on a daily basis back in the day, which was not too long ago. Yeah. And now they're in the midst of doing their own services as well to help out the community. And the last one I would say is outside of Concordia, but it does help a lot, and they're trying to tie ties with Concordia as well as McGill, is Feed the Hen. Because of the fact that they're all volunteer based, and they cook meals on a weekly basis, and they feed about 900 people, which is insane. So those 3 organizations would be my top picks. And if I miss anyone else, doesn't mean that I don't think that they're equally important. I think any organization we can give to is good.
Wonderful. Well, thank you so much for speaking with us today. And I hope you have a much deserved rest over the holidays.
Well, thank you so much for having me, and I wish the same for you. So thank you.
Take care.